The security camera captured it all. Karen's smug smile as she cannonballed into someone else's pool for the third time this week, her entitled laughter echoing across the yard. But what she didn't see was the homeowner watching from the window, finger hovering over a phone that could dial 911 ... or something far more creative. The thermostat on the pool heater glowed red in the darkness, cranked to maximum, waiting for tomorrow's uninvited guest. Some people learn boundaries through conversation, others learn them through scalding water and the sound of their own screaming. Karen was about to discover which category she belonged to. Marcus Chen stood at his kitchen window, coffee mug trembling in his grip as he watched. The woman next door stride across his perfectly manicured backyard like she owned it. Again, the audacity was breathtaking designer swimsuit, expensive sunglasses, dragging a pool float behind her like some kind of trophy. "You've got to be kidding me," he muttered, watching Karen Whitmore drop her towel on his deck chair and dip her toe into his pool, the one he'd saved for 3 years to install, the one that had cost him his vacation fund and half his sanity dealing with contractors. She slipped into the water with a satisfied sigh, floating on her back like she was at some exclusive resort. Through the window, Marcus could hear her actually humming as she kicked her feet, sending ripples across the surface of water that wasn't hers to disturb. His phone buzzed. A text from his wife, Sarah. "How's the pool situation? Did you talk to her yet?" Marcus typed back with shaking fingers. "She's in it right now." Again the response came. "Immediately. Call the police. I tried yesterday. They said it's a civil matter, unless she's causing damage or threatening someone. Then call the HOA. Already did. They're looking into it, but won't do anything until the next board meeting." Marcus set his phone down and pressed his palms against the cool granite countertop. 3 weeks. 3 weeks of this nightmare neighbor treating his backyard like her personal water park. It had started innocently enough, Karen, mentioning over the fence that her pool was being serviced and asking if she could just rinse off in his. He'd been polite, neighborly even, figuring it was a one-time thing. But one time became 2, then 3, then every damn day. And each time, Karen acted like she was doing him a favor, like he should be grateful for her presence. Yesterday, she'd brought friends 3 other middle-aged women who'd sprawled across his deck furniture, leaving wet towel stains and empty wine bottles behind. The front door slammed, and Sarah's voice echoed through the house. "Marcus, I'm home." "Kitchen," he called. Not moving from his post by the window, Sarah appeared in the doorway. Her nurse's scrubs wrinkled from a 12-hour shift at the hospital. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her usually perfect ponytail hung limp against her neck. She'd been working doubles all month, trying to save for the baby they'd been hoping for, and the last thing she needed was this stress. "She's out there again, isn't she?" Sarah's voice was flat, resigned. Marcus nodded toward the window. 20 minutes now, she's doing laps." Sarah joined him at the window, and together they watched Karen execute a perfect backstroke across the length of their pool. The woman was in her early 50s, blonde and artificially enhanced, with a kind of confidence that came from never being told no. She lived in the largest house on the block of Gody McMansion that dwarfed their modest 3-bedroom and drove a white BMW with a license plate that read, "Blessed One." "This is insane," Sarah whispered. "It's like she thinks we're running a public pool." "I'm going out there," Marcus said, setting his mug down with more force than necessary. "Marcus, don't know Sarah. I'm done being polite. I'm done being reasonable. She's trespassing, and I'm going to tell her to get out." Sarah grabbed his arm. "Just ... be careful with your words. Okay, we don't need this escalating." Marcus kissed her forehead, tasting the salt of her exhaustion. "I'll be fine. Time someone set boundaries with Princess Karen." The sliding glass door to the patio opened with a soft whoosh, and Karen's head turned toward the sound. She was floating near the deep end, arms spread wide, looking for all the world like she was posing for a magazine shoot. "Oh, hi, Marcus," she called out, her voice artificially bright. "Hope you don't mind. I just needed a quick cool down. This heat is absolutely brutal." Marcus stepped to the edge of the pool, his bare feet burning against the hot concrete. "Actually, Karen, I do mind. This is the 4th time this week, and I never gave you permission to use my pool whenever you want." Karen laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Oh, come on. Don't be such a stick in the mud. It's just water. Besides, you're not even using it right now. That's not the point. Marcus felt his face flushing. This is private property. My property. You can't just waltz over here whenever you feel like it. God, you're dramatic. Karen flipped onto her stomach and began a lazy breaststroke toward the shallow end. I'm not hurting anything. If anything, I'm keeping your pool clean by stirring up the water. You're keeping my pool? Marcus stopped, took a breath. Karen, I'm asking you nicely to get out and not come back without an invitation. She reached the steps and stood, water cascading from her tanned body. You know what your problem is, Marcus? You're selfish. Here I am, your neighbor, someone you have to live next to for God knows how long, and you can't even share a little chlorinated water. What kind of community spirit is that? Community spirit, Marcus's voice cracked with disbelief. You want to talk about community spirit? How about respecting boundaries? How about asking permission instead of assuming you're entitled to whatever you want? Karen stepped out of the pool, water pooling at her feet. She was tall, nearly as tall as Marcus, and she used every inch of her height to look down at him with disdain. You know what? Fine, be that way. But don't come crying to me when you need a favor. I won't, Marcus said, ever. Good, Karen. Wrapped herself in his towel, he realized, one of the expensive Egyptian cotton ones Sarah had bought for their anniversary. Maybe you should think about getting a privacy fence if you're so concerned about people seeing your precious pool. She gathered her things with exaggerated care, making sure to drip water across his deck as she did. At the gate leading back to her yard, she turned, Oh, and Marcus. My pool guy is coming tomorrow to fix the pump. Might take a few days. Just thought you should know. The gate slammed shut behind her, and Marcus stood alone on his deck, rage boiling in his chest like acid. Through the kitchen window, he could see Sarah watching, her face etched with concern. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Heard you and Karen had words. Might want to keep it down. Some of us are trying to enjoy our afternoon. Bill next door. Marcus stared at the message, his hands shaking. Bill lived on the other side of Karen's house, and if he was texting complaints, it meant Karen had already started her victim tour, painting herself as the wronged party. Another text, this one from a number he recognized as belonging to Janet from 3 houses down. Everything okay? Karen seemed upset when she got back from your place. And another, hope you guys can work things out. Neighborhood drama is never fun. Tom Marcus felt the walls closing in. Somehow, in the span of 10 minutes, he'd gone from being the victim to being the villain. Karen had managed to flip the script, making him look like the unreasonable one. The bad neighbor who couldn't share. He walked back into the house, where Sarah was waiting with a glass of iced tea and a worried expression. Did it go? She asked, though her tone suggested she already knew. She's not going to stop, Marcus said. If anything, I think I just made it worse. Sarah sank into a kitchen chair. Maybe we should just put up a fence, a tall one. With what money? We're barely making ends meet as it is. Marcus began pacing, his bare feet slapping against the tile. Besides, why should we have to spend thousands of dollars to keep our neighbor out of our pool? Why should we have to build a fortress around our own home? Because sometimes that's what it takes to have peace. No, Marcus stopped pacing, turned to face his wife. No, I'm not going to let her win. She's counting on us giving up, on us being too polite or too broke to fight back. Well, I'm done being polite. Sarah studied his face, and Marcus saw something. Flicker in her eyes, concern, maybe, or fear. What are you thinking? I'm thinking it's time Karen learned that actions have consequences. Marcus, she wants to use my pool. Fine, but she's going to use it on my terms. Marcus walked to the utility room, where the pool equipment hummed quietly in the corner. The heater control panel glowed softly, displaying the current water. Temperature, 82 degrees. Perfect for swimming, comfortable for long soaks. His finger hovered over the temperature adjustment button. The heater was powerful, designed to heat the pool quickly for those cooler spring and fall days. It could push the water temperature up to 104 degrees hot tub territory, but still technically safe. Above that, though, things got dangerous. The heater had a manual override installed by the previous owners, who'd apparently enjoyed their water scalding hot. Push the temperature above 110, and the water became painful. Above 120, and it became dangerous. Marcus's finger moved to the override switch. "Marcus." Sarah's voice came from the doorway. "What are you doing?" He turned, his hand still on the control panel. "Karen said her pool guy is coming tomorrow." Part 2. The morning sun cast long shadows across Marcus's backyard as he stood at the kitchen window, watching the pool temperature gauge on his phone app tick steadily upward. 118 degrees and climbing. The water looked deceptively clear, inviting even but beneath the surface. It had become a weapon waiting to be deployed. Sarah had left for work an hour ago, her goodbye kiss cool against his cheek and her eyes filled with unspoken worry. She'd tried one more time to talk him out of it, standing in the doorway with her scrubs in hand and her voice carefully neutral. "It's not too late to change your mind," she'd said. "Just flip the switch back." But Marcus had already made his choice. He'd lain awake most of the night, staring at the ceiling and replaying every humiliation. Every moment, Karen had made him feel small and powerless in his own home. The memory that kept surfacing was from last Tuesday, when he'd come home from work to find Karen and 3 of her friends sprawled across his deck furniture. Empty wine bottles scattered like confetti. She'd waved at him through the sliding glass door, raising her glass in a mock toast, and he'd felt something fundamental shift inside him the moment when a reasonable man decides he's done being reasonable. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number, pool maintenance scheduled for 10 a.m. "Thanks for your patience." Aquaclear Services. Marcus frowned, then realized the text was meant for Karen, her pool guy, which meant she'd be over soon, looking for her temporary oasis while her own pool was being serviced. The temperature gauge on his phone showed 122 degrees, hot enough to cause first-degree burns within seconds, second-degree burns within minutes. Marcus felt a flicker of something, not quite doubt, but awareness. He was crossing a line, stepping into territory he'd never imagined he'd enter. But then he heard it. The familiar sound of Karen's gate latch clicking open. Marcus moved to the window and watched her emerge from the privacy hedge that separated their properties. Today she wore a white bikini that probably cost more than his monthly car payment, her blonde hair pulled back in a high ponytail that swayed with each confident step. She carried her usual arsenal: oversized towel, designer sunglasses, a water bottle that undoubtedly contained something stronger than water. She paused at the edge of his pool, dipping her toe in to test the temperature. Marcus held his breath, waiting for her reaction. Karen's foot jerked back, and she looked down at the water with a puzzled expression. She tried again, this time submerging her foot up to the ankle. Even from the kitchen window, Marcus could see her wince. But instead of leaving, Karen straightened her shoulders and walked to the pool's control panel mounted on the side of the house. Marcus watched in growing alarm as she studied the digital display, her fingers hovering over the buttons. "No," he whispered, rushing toward the sliding door. "Don't touch that." But he was too late. Karen's manicured finger pressed the temperature down button, and Marcus watched helplessly as the display began to drop. 120 degrees, 115, 110. "Son of a bitch," Marcus muttered, stepping onto the patio. "Karen." She looked up from the control panel, her expression morphing from confusion to smug satisfaction. "Oh, hi, Marcus. I think your pool heater is broken. The water's way too hot. Good thing I know how to fix these things. Get away from my equipment," Marcus said, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. "Relax. I'm helping you." This thing was set to dangerous levels. Someone could get seriously hurt. Karen's tone was condescending, like she was explaining something to a child. "You really should have this looked at by a professional." Marcus felt the blood rushing to his face. Not only had Karen invaded his property again, but she'd also destroyed his plan and was now lecturing him about pool safety. The irony was suffocating. "I don't need your help," he said through gritted teeth. "I need you to get off my property." "God, you're grumpy in the morning." Karen turned back to the control panel, continuing to adjust the settings. "There, that's better. A nice, comfortable 84 degrees, perfect for a morning swim." She sauntered over to the pool steps, and Marcus realized, with growing horror, that she was actually going to get in. Even at 84 degrees, the water was still cooling down from its dangerous high, and there was no way to know exactly how hot it still was in some areas. Karen, wait, but she was already descending the steps, her face brightening as the water reached her waist. "Oh, that's much better." still a little warm, but not scalding. "You really should thank me." Marcus stood frozen, watching her ease into the water. Part of him wanted to warn her, to pull her out before she could get hurt. But another part that had been building for weeks, wanted to see her face when she realized she'd walked into a trap of her own making. The water was still dangerously hot in spots. The circulation system working to equalize the temperature, but not fast enough. Marcus could see steam rising from the far end of the pool, where the heater output was located. Karen began to swim, her strokes confident and strong. She made it halfway across the pool before her rhythm faltered. She stopped, treading water, her face scrunched in confusion. "This water feels weird," she said, looking back at Marcus. "Like it's hot in some places and cooler in others." "Maybe you should get out," Marcus suggested, but his voice lacked conviction. "I'm fine," Karen said, but she was swimming more cautiously now, her head up, avoiding the deeper areas where the hot water was pooling. Marcus's phone rang, the sound cutting through the morning air like an alarm. He glanced at the screensaver, calling from work. "I have to take this," he said, stepping back toward the house. Sarah's voice was strained. "How's everything going? Has she?" "She's here," Marcus said quietly, glancing back at Karen, who was now floating on her. Back near the shallow end, she adjusted the temperature down, but the water is still hot in places. "You need to get her out of there now." "I tried. She won't listen." "Marcus, I'm serious. If she gets hurt, then maybe she'll finally learn to respect other people's property." Silence stretched between them. When Sarah spoke again, her voice was cold. "I can't believe you just said that." "Sarah, no, Marcus, listen to me. This isn't about the pool anymore. This is about who you are as a person. And right now, I don't recognize the man I married." The line went dead, and Marcus stared at his phone, Sarah's words echoing in his head. Through the sliding glass door, he could see Karen still swimming, oblivious to the danger she was in and the moral crisis she'd sparked in his marriage. He was about to go back outside when he heard Ita. Sharp cry of pain from the pool area. Marcus rushed to the window and saw Karen clinging to the pool's edge, her face twisted in agony. She was trying to pull herself out, but every time she put weight on her arms, she cried out again. "Help me," she screamed, her voice cracking with panic. "Something's wrong with the water." Marcus ran outside, his heart hammering in his chest. Karen was still in the pool, but barely she'd managed to get her upper body onto the deck, but her legs were still submerged in the water. "I can't get out," she gasped, tears streaming down her face. "It's burning me. The water's burning me." Marcus knelt beside her, grabbing her arms to help pull her from the pool. Her skin was already turning red, and he could feel the heat radiating from her body. "What did you do?" Karen screamed as he dragged her fully onto the deck. "What did you do to your pool?" "Nothing," Marcus said, but the word came out wrong. "Guilty. The heater must have malfunctioned." Karen tried to stand, but her legs buckled. Marcus could see the damaged, now angry red welts across her thighs and calves, the kind of burns that would leave scars. "You did this on purpose," she whispered, her eyes wide with shock and pain. "You tried to kill me." "That's not didn't. You're insane." Karen's voice rose to a shriek. "You're completely insane." She fumbled for her phone, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold it. "I'm calling 911. I'm calling the police. You're going to jail for this." Marcus felt the world spinning around him. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. She was supposed to get in, feel the heat, and get out. A shock, a scare, a lesson learned. He hadn't meant for her to actually get burned. "Karen, let me help you. Don't touch me." She scooted away from him, her phone pressed to her ear. "Yes, hello, I need an ambulance." "And the police? My neighbor tried to kill me." Marcus sank onto one of his deck chairs, the weight of what he'd done settling on his shoulders like a lead blanket. In the distance, he could already hear sirens approaching. His phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "I'm coming home. Don't say anything to anyone until I get there." But it was too late for that. Karen was already talking to the dispatcher, her voice carrying across the yard as she described the booby trap he'd set for her. Neighbors were starting to emerge from their houses, drawn by the commotion and the approaching sirens. Marcus looked at his pool, the water still steaming in places, and realized that in trying to teach Karen a lesson about consequences, he'd learned the hardest lesson of all. Some lines once crossed, can never be uncrossed. The ambulance arrived first, followed closely by 2 police cars. As the paramedics tended to Karen's burns and the officers began taking statements, Marcus found himself thinking about Sarah's words, "I don't recognize the man I married." Neither did he. Detective Ray Castellanos had seen plenty of neighbor disputes in his 15 years on the force, but this was a first. He stood on Marcus Chen's deck, watching the paramedics load Karen Whitmore into the ambulance, her legs wrapped in gauze, and her voice still carrying threats across the suburban morning air. "I want that psychopath arrested," Karen screamed as they wheeled her toward the vehicle. "He tried to murder me. This was premeditated." Marcus sat in one of his own patio chairs, looking like a man who'd just watched his life implode in real time. His hands shook as he gave his statement to Officer Martinez, his voice barely above a whisper. "It was an accident," Marcus repeated for the 3rd time. "The heater must have malfunctioned." "I had no idea the water was that hot." Castellanos crouched beside the pool, studying the digital control panel. The display showed a normal 84 degrees, but when he dipped his hand into the water near the heater jets, he pulled it back with a sharp hiss. Still dangerously hot in spots, despite the system's attempts to circulate and cool. Mr. Chen, Castellanos said, approaching Marcus with his notepad ready. "Can you walk me through what happened this morning?" Marcus looked up, his eyes red-rimmed and unfocused. "I was in the kitchen when I heard screaming. I came out and found Karen trying to get out of the pool. She said the water was burning her, and you had no idea the water temperature was elevated." "No." Marcus stopped, seeming to realize the trap in the question. "I mean, I don't usually check the temperature every morning. I just assumed it was normal." Castellanos made a note. The man was lying. That much was obvious. But proving intent would be another matter entirely. Pool heaters did malfunction, and without witnesses to Marcus actively tampering with the system, the case would come down to expert testimony and circumstantial evidence. "Has Mrs. Whitmore been using your pool before today?" Castellanos asked. Marcus's jaw tightened. "She's been trespassing for weeks. I've asked her repeatedly to stay out of my yard, but she keeps coming back. Did you file any formal complaints?" "I called the police twice last week. Both times I was told it was a civil matter unless she was causing damage." Castellanos nodded. He remembered those call-standard neighbor disputes that patrol had classified as not criminal. But now those same complaints would look like motive. In court, "Mr. Chen, I need you to be completely honest with me. Did you adjust your pool heater in any way last night or this morning?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. When he looked up, his voice was steady but hollow. "I want to speak to a lawyer." The words hung in the air like a confession. Castellanos closed his notepad and gestured to Officer Martinez. "Mr. Chen, you're under arrest for assault in the 1st degree. You have the right to remain silent. ... As the handcuffs clicked around Marcus's wrists, a white Honda Civic screeched into the driveway. Sarah Chen emerged at a run, still wearing her hospital scrubs, her face pale with panic. "What's happening?" she demanded, pushing through the small crowd of neighbors that had gathered. "Marcus, ma'am, please step back," Martinez said, but Sarah was already at her husband's side. "Don't say anything else," she whispered urgently. "I called a lawyer. He's meeting us at the station." Marcus looked at his wife, and Sarah saw something broken in his eyes. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I'm so sorry." "We'll figure this out," Sarah replied, but her voice cracked on the words as the police car pulled away with Marcus in the back seat. Sarah found herself alone on the deck, surrounded by concerned neighbors and the lingering smell of chlorine and disaster. The pool sparkled innocently in the morning sun, giving no hint of the violence it had just witnessed. Sarah, Janet from 3 houses down, approached cautiously. "Is there anything we can do?" Sarah looked around at the faces surrounding her, some genuinely concerned, others clearly there for the drama. These were the same people who'd been texting complaints yesterday when Marcus had the audacity to ask Karen to respect his property. "You can all go home," Sarah said flatly. "The show's over." But even as the crowd dispersed, Sarah knew the real show was just beginning. By noon, the story would be all over social media. By evening, it would be on the local news. Local man sets pool trap for neighbor. Suburban hot tub horror. The headlines practically wrote themselves. Her phone rang Marcus's lawyer. David Kim, a criminal defense attorney they'd found through a frantic Google search. "Mrs. Chen, I'm at the station now. They're booking your husband on assault charges, but I should be able to get him released on bail by this afternoon." "How bad is this?" Sarah asked, sinking into a deck chair. "Bad," Kim said bluntly. "The victim has second-degree burns over 15% of her body. She likely needs skin grafts, and she's already talking to personal injury lawyers." Sarah closed her eyes. "What about criminal charges?" "That depends on what Marcus tells me and what the investigation turns up. If they can prove intent that he deliberately set the heater to dangerous levels, knowing she would use the pool, he's looking at serious prison time. And if they can't prove intent, then we might be able to plead it down to reckless endangerment." "But Sarah, ... Kim's voice softened. "You need to prepare yourself for the possibility that your husband is going away for a long time." After Kim hung up, Sarah sat alone on her deck, staring at the pool that had destroyed her life. The water was finally cooling to normal temperatures, but she knew she'd never be able to look at it the same way again. Her phone buzzed with a text from her supervisor at the hospital. "Saw the news. Take all the time you need. Thinking of you, the news." Sarah grabbed her laptop and searched for her husband's name. The first result made her stomach drop. "Local nurse's husband arrested in pool, burning attack." The article was brief but damning, describing Marcus as a disgruntled neighbor who had allegedly booby-trapped his pool with scalding water. There was a photo of Karen being loaded into the ambulance, her face twisted in pain, and another of Marcus being led away in handcuffs. The comments section was already filling up with outrage. What kind of monster does this to another human being? He should be locked up forever. This was attempted murder. I feel so bad for his wife. She must be mortified. Sarah slammed the laptop shut, but she couldn't stop the cascade of notifications flooding her phone. Facebook messages, texts, emails. Everyone wanted to know what had happened, wanted her side of the story, wanted to offer their shock and sympathy. She was about to turn off her phone when it rang again. The caller ID showed her mother's number. "Sarah, honey, I just saw the news." Her mother's voice was tight with worry. "Are you okay? Do you need me to come up there?" "I'm fine, Mom," Sarah lied. "It's all just a big misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" "Sarah, they're saying Marcus tried to kill that woman." "He didn't try to kill anyone. He just..." Sarah stopped, realizing she didn't actually know what Marcus had done. They'd never had the full conversation, never talked through the plan step by step. She'd assumed he was just going to make the water uncomfortably warm, give Karen a shock, teach her a lesson. But looking at the pool now, remembering the steam rising from the surface and Karen's screams of agony, Sarah realized her husband had crossed a line she'd never imagined he was capable of crossing. "Sarah," her mother's voice pulled her back. "What aren't you telling me?" "I have to go, Mom. I need to figure out how to pay for a lawyer." "Honey, if you need money, I'll call you later." Sarah hung up and walked to the edge of the pool. The water was finally back to normal temperature, but she could still see the evidence of what had happened: scuff marks on the deck where Karen had struggled to pull herself out, dark stains where her burned skin had touched the concrete. A movement in her peripheral vision caught her attention. Bill Henderson, the neighbor who'd texted complaints yesterday, was standing at his fence line, openly staring at her yard. "Something you need, Bill," Sarah called out. He had the grace to look embarrassed. "Just wanted to make sure you're okay. This whole thing is just ... "Wow." "Yeah, wow," Sarah repeated flatly. Sarah turned to face him fully. "What exactly did you think he'd do?" Bill shifted uncomfortably. "I don't know. Put up a fence, maybe. Call the HOA. Normal stuff, right? Normal stuff." Sarah's voice was bitter, because God forbid anyone actually enforced their property rights around here. "Look, I'm not defending what Karen did, but what Marcus did was what?" Sarah stepped closer to the fence. "What Marcus did was what, exactly?" "Try to protect his own property. Try to set boundaries with a woman who refused to respect the word no. He could have killed her. She could have respected our property in the first place." Bill stared at her for a moment, then shook his head. "I can't believe you're defending him." "I'm not defending anyone," Sarah said. "I'm just tired of everyone acting like Marcus is some kind of monster when all he wanted was to be left alone in his own backyard." But even as she spoke the words, Sarah wondered if she believed them. Because the man who had set a trap with scalding water, who had waited patiently for someone to walk into it, who had watched Karen struggle and scream before helping her, that man wasn't the Marcus she'd married. That man was someone else entirely. Someone capable of calculated cruelty, of watching another human being suffer for the crime of being in. Part 4, the Riverside County Jail, smelled like disinfectant and desperation. Marcus sat on the narrow bench in his holding cell, still wearing the clothes he'd put on that morning when his biggest worry was Karen's daily pool invasion. Now he was facing felony assault charges, his wife's savings account was being drained by legal fees, and his name was trending on local Twitter alongside words like psychopath and monster. Through the small window, he could see the sun setting, painting the sky the same orange as the jumpsuit they'd given him. In 12 hours, he'd gone from suburban homeowner to accused attempted murderer. The transformation felt surreal, like watching someone else's life fall apart on television. His lawyer, David Kim, sat across from him at the metal table, a manila folder spread between them like a peace treaty nobody wanted to sign. The district attorney is pushing for assault in the first degree with a hate crime enhancement, Kim said, his voice carefully neutral. They're arguing that you targeted Karen because of her gender and socioeconomic status. Marcus laughed, the sound echoing off the concrete walls. Hate crime. I didn't target her because she's a woman. I targeted her because she's a trespasser. That's not how the prosecutor sees it. They have your neighbor complaints on record, and apparently Karen's been telling anyone. Who'll listen that you've made comments about entitled women and rich bitches who think they can do whatever they want? I never, Marcus stopped. Remembering a conversation with Sarah last week where he'd used exactly those words, had Karen overheard? Had one of the other neighbors? It doesn't matter if you said it or not, Kim continued. Karen's lawyer is building a narrative. Angry man, frustrated with successful female neighbor, sets elaborate trap to punish her for being confident and assertive. They're painting you. As a misogynist who couldn't handle a strong woman, Marcus felt the blood draining from his face. That's not what this was about. Then tell me what it was about, because right now I'm looking at surveillance footage from your neighbor's security camera that shows you adjusting your pool heater at 11:47 p.m. last night. The timestamp is crystal clear. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He'd forgotten about Bill Henderson's security camera, the one pointed at his own driveway, but with a wide enough angle to catch part of Marcus's backyard. They have video of me at the heater, clear as day. And the temperature logs from your pool system show the water was heated to 124 degrees. Hot enough to cause severe burns within seconds. This wasn't a malfunction, Marcus. This was premeditated. Marcus buried his face in his hands. I didn't mean for her to get hurt that badly. I thought she'd jump out as soon as she felt the heat. But you did intend to hurt her. The words hung in the air like an accusation. Marcus wanted to deny it, to claim it was all a misunderstanding. But the truth was becoming impossible to avoid. He had wanted Karen to suffer. Not permanently, not severely, but he had wanted her to feel pain, to experience consequences for her actions. She wouldn't stop, Marcus said quietly. Week after week, she treated my property like her personal resort. I asked her nicely. I told her to stop. I called the police. Nothing worked. She just kept coming back, more entitled every time. So, you decided to take the law into your own hands. I decided to protect my property by setting a trap that could have killed her. Marcus looked up, meeting Kim's eyes. Do you have kids, David? 2 daughters. And if someone kept breaking into your backyard, using your pool, bringing their friends over, treating your home like a public park, what would you do? Kim closed the folder. I'd build a fence. With what money? Do you know what I make as a high school teacher? Do you know what my wife makes as a nurse? We saved for 3 years to afford that pool. 3 years of no vacations, no new car, no dinners out. And this woman just waltzed in and treated it like her personal spa. I understand your frustration. No, you don't. Marcus's voice rose, drawing a warning look from the guard. You don't understand what it's like to work your ass off for something, to sacrifice for it, only to have some entitled princess take it from you because she can. Kim leaned forward. Marcus, I need you to listen to me very carefully. The woman you burned has 2nd and 3rd degree burns over 20% of her body. She's had 2 surgeries already, and she'll need at least 3 more. She may have permanent scarring and nerve damage. Her medical bills are already approaching six figures. The room seemed to tilt around Marcus. Third-degree burns. But she was only in the water for a few minutes. Water at 124 degrees causes third-degree burns in less than 15 seconds. You didn't just heat your pool, Marcus. You turned it into a weapon. Marcus felt bile rising in his throat. He'd pictured Karen jumping out with a yelp, maybe some redness on her skin, a lesson learned. He'd never imagined surgery, scarring, permanent damage. The civil lawsuit is going to destroy you, Kim continued. Even if we somehow get the criminal charges reduced, Karen's personal injury lawyer is going for everything: your house, your savings, your future earnings. You're looking at financial ruin. What about Sarah? Can they go after her assets too? You're married, community, property, state. They can take everything. Marcus felt the walls of the cell closing in. His wife, the woman who'd begged him not to escalate the situation, was going to lose everything because of his need for revenge. There's something else, Kim said, opening the folder again. The prosecutor is offering a plea deal. What kind of deal? Assault in the second degree, 5 years in state prison, full restitution for medical expenses and pain and suffering. You'd probably serve 3 years with good behavior. 3 years. Marcus tried to imagine Sarah visiting him in prison, tried to picture coming home to a wife who'd spent 3 years cleaning up the mess he'd made. And if I don't take the deal, if we go to trial and lose, you're looking at 15 to 20 years. And Marcus, ... Kim's voice softened. With the video evidence and the severity of Karen's injuries, our chances at trial aren't good. Before Marcus could respond, the guard appeared at the cell door. Chen, you've got a visitor. Marcus followed. The guard down the corridor, expecting to see Sarah waiting in the visitor's room. Instead, he found himself face to face with Karen Whitmore. She sat on the other side of the reinforced glass, her legs wrapped in bandages, her face pale but her eyes burning with an intensity that made Marcus step back involuntarily. She picked up the phone on her side of the barrier, and after a moment's hesitation, Marcus did the same. "Hello, Marcus," she said, her voice surprisingly calm. "Karen, I'm sorry. I never meant for you to get hurt this badly." "Yes, you did." Her voice was matter-of-fact, almost conversational. "You wanted me to suffer. You wanted me to learn a lesson. Well, congratulations. Lesson learned." Marcus stared at her through the glass. "What do you want?" "I want to tell you what your little prank cost me. I've had 14 hours of surgery so far. The doctors say I'll need at least 6 more operations. I may never walk normally again. I'll have scars for the rest of my life." She leaned forward, her eyes never leaving his. "But you know what the worst part is?" Marcus shook his head. The worst part is that I understand why you did it." Karen's voice was soft now, almost sympathetic. "You felt powerless. You felt like I was taking something from you that you couldn't afford to lose. You felt like the system failed you, like nobody cared about your rights or your feelings." "Karen, I'm not finished." Her voice sharpened. "You felt all those things, and instead of being an adult about it, instead of finding a legal solution, you decided to hurt me. You decided that your feelings mattered more than my safety." Marcus couldn't look away from her eyes. There was something hypnotic about her calmness, something terrifying about the way she spoke, as if she were his therapist instead of his victim. "So here's what's going to happen," Karen continued. "You're going to take whatever plea deal they offer you. You're going to serve your time, and when you get out, you're going to remember this conversation every time you feel powerless. Every time you think someone is taking something from you." "I can't afford the restitution," Marcus said weakly. "Then you'll spend the rest of your life paying it off. You'll work 2 jobs, 3 jobs. You'll give up every luxury, every comfort, every little pleasure, just like I'm giving up my mobility, my confidence, my sense of safety in my own neighborhood." Karen stood up, wincing as she put weight on her damaged legs. "Oh, and Marcus, your wife came to see me in the hospital yesterday." Marcus felt his heart stop. "What?" "Sweet woman. Very apologetic. She wanted to know if there was anything she could do." Karen smiled, and the expression was more terrifying than her anger had been. "I told her there was, actually. I told her she could leave you." The phone slipped from Marcus's hand, clattering against the wall. Through the glass, he could see Karen's lips moving, but he couldn't hear the words anymore. The guard was approaching, ready to escort him back to his cell, but Marcus couldn't move. Sarah was going to leave him. His wife, the only good thing left in his life, was going to walk away because of what he'd done. And he couldn't blame her. He'd destroyed everything: his freedom, his finances, his marriage, all for the satisfaction of watching a woman suffer as the guard led him back down the corridor. Marcus caught a glimpse of the setting sun through a window. Tomorrow, Sarah would